My daughter didn't have the money to fix her broken laptop, so I secretly took it in for repair as a surprise. When I went to pick it up, the technician looked terrified. "Ma'am, change your locks immediately and go to the police," he told me, pointing at the screen. My own daughter, Piper, was planning to rob my house while I slept. Where are you watching us from today? Leave your location in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. It all started 3 weeks ago when I, Carla Miller, got home after my shift at Dr. Hayes' animal clinic and found my daughter Piper sitting on the couch, holding her damaged laptop. Tears streamed down her cheeks like overflowing rivers, and for a moment I remembered the 10-year-old girl who used to rush to me every time she got hurt. "Mom," she sobbed, "it slipped out of my hands in my apartment." She showed me the screen with strange lines and a visible crack in the casing. "It won't turn on properly, and I need to submit my master's project next week." My heart sank. At 53, I had raised Piper alone after her father, Rick, died in a tragic home accident when she was 10. Since then, it had always been just us two against the world. Piper, now 28, was everything I had. My only child, my pride, my reason to keep going. "Don't you worry, honey," I said, hugging her while mentally tallying my savings. As a veterinary technician, my salary was decent, and I'd managed to save up a good chunk thanks to an inheritance and Rick's life insurance. "I'll take care of it." Piper looked up, her green eyes, her father's legacy, shining with hope. "Really?" "Mom, you're the best. I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I get a job after graduation." That promise sounded familiar. It was the same one she'd made when I loaned her money for college expenses, for her apartment deposit, and for the used car she desperately needed. But she was my daughter. What else could I do? The next day, after finishing my shift, I took the laptop to the only computer repair shop in our small town of Ashton Creek, Ohio. The technician, a young guy named Jake, with more tattoos than years, examined the machine with professional care. "The screen is damaged and there are hard drive issues, but the data can be recovered," he announced after several minutes of diagnosis. "It's going to cost about $600. $600 represented 2 months of careful saving. But when I saw the desperate look on Piper's face, who had come with me, I knew I had no choice. "Okay," I sighed, handing him my card. "How long will it take?" "A week, maybe 10 days. I have to be very careful with data recovery." During those 2 weeks, Piper stayed at my house more frequently, claiming she couldn't concentrate in her apartment without her computer. She was constantly glued to her phone, sending texts and talking in hushed tones to people I didn't know. When I asked her who she was talking to, she vaguely answered that they were classmates. Something felt strange, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Piper had always been private, but this was different. She'd wake up late at night, walking around the house like a ghost. I'd hear her whispering into her phone from the kitchen, using words I couldn't make out, but which sounded urgent, almost conspiratorial. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" I asked one morning while making coffee. "Yeah, Mom, just thesis stress," she replied without looking up from her phone. But I knew my daughter. After 18 years of raising her alone, I could read her moods like an open book. There was something else, something that kept a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. Last Friday, I finally got the call from Jake. "Carla, your laptop is ready. I managed to recover almost everything. You can come pick it up whenever you like." I decided to surprise Piper. She had left early that morning, saying she had a meeting with her thesis advisor, so I used my lunch break to go to the repair shop. Jake greeted me with a serious expression, very different from his usual laid-back demeanor. He looked nervous, as if carrying an invisible weight. "Here it is," he said, placing the laptop on the counter. "It works perfectly now. I managed to recover all the important files, thank you." "Jake, my daughter is going to be thrilled." But he didn't hand me the computer right away. He just stood there, biting his lower lip, with that look I knew well from my years working with distressed animals, the look of someone who knows something terrible but isn't sure how to communicate it. "Mrs. Miller," he began slowly. "During the data recovery, I had to check some files to make sure they were intact." My heart started pounding faster. There was something in his tone that made my skin crawl, a premonition that my world was about to change forever. "What did you find, Jake?" Jake glanced toward the shop door, checking that we were alone. Then he leaned over the counter and lowered his voice significantly. Ma'am, I found some very disturbing documents on your daughter's computer. I'm not sure how to tell you this. The air in the room became thick, almost unbreathable. What kind of documents? Detailed plans for robbing you. Maps of your house. Schedules of your activities. Information about your bank accounts. His voice cracked slightly. And something called Operation Mom. I felt as if the floor had vanished beneath my feet. Can you show me? Jake hesitated, clearly battling his conscience. Technically, he shouldn't show me private files, but this is too serious. He turned on the laptop and navigated to a folder that had been hidden. My world collapsed when I saw the contents. There was a Word document titled Operational Blueprint. Final phase. Opening it revealed text that would forever destroy the image I had of my daughter. Operation Mom, final execution timeline. Objective, complete access to Carla Miller's financial resources. Financial goal, $500,000, savings plus liquidation of properties. Deadline, before she suspects or changes her financial habits. Phase 1, complete. Establishment of dependence, create frequent financial emergencies, increase time at her house for reconnaissance, gain access to routines and security codes. Phase 2, in progress. Intelligence gathering, photograph bank and legal documents, memorize alarm codes and sleep patterns, catalog location of valuables. Phase 3, scheduled for next week. Execution, nighttime access using duplicated keys, fund transfer during deep sleep hours, simulation of violent robbery to justify trauma and confusion. My legs turned to jelly. Jake had to hold my arm as I staggered toward a nearby chair. Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone? I couldn't speak. The air seemed to have solidified, impossible to breathe. My own daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love after her father's death. She was planning to completely destroy my life. There's more, Jake said softly. I wasn't sure I could bear to see any more. He opened another folder called Recon. Inside were photographs that had clearly been taken in secret at my house, my safe, behind a large landscape painting, my bank statements left on the desk, even photos of my nightly routine, taken from the hallway. But what truly devastated me was finding a folder called Psychological Analysis of Target. Piper had been documenting my emotional reaction as if I were a scientific experiment. Entry 1. Subject shows predictable patterns of maternal guilt. Responds immediately to fabricated crises related to my education. Entry 2. Vulnerability confirmed. Extreme fear of abandonment. Any threat of losing contact generates an immediate financial response. Entry 3. Exploitable weakness. Compulsive need to prove she's a good mother after raising a child alone. This insecurity is the key to total manipulation. Each word was a dagger straight to the heart. My daughter didn't just see me as a victim. She had been studying my most intimate emotion to use them against me. Jake opened one last file that made me rush to the restroom to throw up. It was a group chat titled Accelerated Inheritance Strategies, where Piper shared techniques with other young women. Piper M., I scored another $15,000 last week. The trick is creating a false medical urgency. Chloe B., excellent. What kind of emergency did you invent this time? Piper M., supposed emergency surgery. My mother didn't even ask to see medical documents. Sarah M., single mothers are the best marks. They feel so guilty they practically beg you to take their money. Piper M., exactly. Mine is so desperate for maternal validation, it's painful to watch. There were at least 6 women in this group, all sharing strategies to exploit their families, and my daughter was clearly one of the leaders. When I returned from the restroom, Jake had printed the most important pages. Mrs. Miller, you need to go to the police immediately and change all your locks tonight. I took the documents with uncontrollably trembling hands. When? When is she planning the final execution? Jake reviewed the files again. According to the most recent documents, she plans to do it this Sunday night. She's apparently going to use sleeping pills in your dinner and then perform the transfers while you're unconscious. This Sunday, 2 days away. Jake, is there anything else I should know? My brother Eric works for the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Can I take these documents to him? Please do. This is much bigger than we initially thought. As I walked toward my car, carrying the laptop that contained the evidence of the deepest betrayal I could imagine, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Piper. Mom, I'm running late today. My advisor meeting extended. See you at dinner. I love you so much. For the first time in my life, those words, I love you, felt like pure venom. For the next 30 minutes, driving home in a fog of shock and betrayal, I could only think of one question. How had the girl I had comforted through nightmares, taught to ride a bike, and hugged every night for 18 years, turned into a stranger planning my total destruction? What I didn't know was that the full truth would be even more devastating than I could imagine. I arrived home in a state of total shock, my mind struggling to process what I had seen. I sat in the kitchen with the laptop open, forcing myself to read every document one more time, desperately searching for some alternative explanation that wasn't the horrible reality, but every line confirmed the same thing. My daughter had been executing an elaborate plan to steal from me for months, maybe years. I immediately called my brother Eric, who worked in the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Carla, what's wrong? Your voice sounds terrible. Eric, I need your help urgently. My daughter is involved in something very bad. I sent him the photos of the documents as we spoke. The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Eric spoke in his professional investigator's voice. Sis, this is extremely serious. This network you're describing, we've been tracking similar operations for the last 6 months. If the evidence is authentic, your daughter could face between 10 and 15 years in federal prison. 6 months? You already knew about this? Not about Piper specifically, but about this accelerated inheritance strategies group. They've defrauded families out of over $1.8 million in the last year. My stomach twisted. $1.8 million. Carla, according to our files, your daughter appears as a mid-level organizer in this network. She's been training other young women in psychological manipulation techniques. What do you need me to do? Maintain your normal routine until Sunday. We've already been infiltrating this network. We have agents ready. When they try to execute the plan, we'll catch them red-handed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house startled me. Every shadow seemed menacing. Piper arrived late, as promised, and acted completely normal during a dinner, chatting about her day, asking about my job, being the perfect daughter. It was all an act. Saturday was torturous. Piper spent the day studying in the living room, but now I could see the truth behind her actions. Every time she got up to go to the restroom, she discreetly photographed documents. When she offered to help me cook, she was really memorizing the location of valuables. Mom, how about we make something special for dinner tomorrow? She suggested while pretending to read an academic book. We could make your favorite lasagna and open a bottle of wine. Lasagna and wine. According to her documents, that was the perfect combination to conceal the taste of the sleeping pills. That sounds perfect, sweetie, I replied, practicing the same maternal act I had been perfecting for 28 years. That afternoon, while Piper was in the shower, I discreetly checked her bag. I found exactly what I expected. A prescription bottle of sleeping pills bought with a fake prescription, and something that chilled my blood. A small device for cloning bank cards. My daughter wasn't just an amateur scammer. She was a sophisticated criminal with professional equipment. Sunday morning, Eric called me early. Carla, are you ready? Our team will be positioned around your house starting at 6 p.m. Full team. 8 agents, including someone who personally knows Piper's contact. We believe she's not working alone on tonight's operation. What do you mean? According to our informants, someone else is involved, someone with banking system experience who is going to handle the electronic transfers from a remote location. My blood turned to ice. Who? We don't know yet, but tonight we'll find out. I spent the entire day feigning normality while my inner world disintegrated. I prepared the lasagna, the same one I had learned to make from my grandmother when Piper was little. The irony of cooking her favorite dish on the night she planned to betray me was not lost on me. At 5 p.m., I began the final preparations. Piper looked relaxed, almost cheerful, clearly anticipating the success of her plan. Mom, it smells incredible. I can't believe you did all this just for us. You're my only daughter, I replied, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. You deserve the best. At exactly 6 p.m., my phone vibrated with a text from Eric. In position. At 6:30, Piper opened the bottle of wine. I discreetly watched her pour the glasses and confirmed what I already knew. Only mine contained this special gift. A toast, Piper said, raising her glass, to the best mom in the world, who has always been there for me. I raised my glass, pretending to toast, but only wet my lips without actually drinking. For the next hour, we maintained a completely normal conversation, while I acted as if the pills were beginning to take effect. I feel a little dizzy, I mentioned around 7:30. Maybe the wine is hitting me harder than usual. Piper's eyes lit up with barely visible satisfaction. Why don't you lie down on the couch, Mom? I'll clean everything up. You're an angel, honey. I went to the couch, laid down, and began the most difficult performance of my life, pretending to be drugged and unconscious while my own daughter prepared my financial destruction. Through my half-closed eyelids, I watched her quickly clean up, verify my state of consciousness, and then make the call I had been waiting for. She's ready. You can start the transfers. But what I heard next terrified me more than everything before. No, don't come here. Handle everything remotely as we agreed. And remember, if anything goes wrong, we never met. My daughter not only had an accomplice, she had one smart enough to stay away from the crime scene. At that moment, I knew that tonight was going to reveal secrets much deeper and more dangerous than I'd imagined. From my position on the couch, I kept my eyes barely closed as I watched Piper move through the house, with an efficiency that spoke of months of careful planning. She knew every creak in the floor, every exact location of my valuables. I heard her head straight to my room. Across the hall, I could see lights flickering on and off as she photographed important documents. Then I heard the distinctive sound of my safe being opened. How had she gotten the combination? My phone was on silent mode, but I could feel the constant vibrations of messages coming in. It had to be Eric and his team coordinating the operation from outside. Piper returned to the living room with a different laptop than the one we had repaired. This one was smaller, clearly designed for portable operations. She sat at the dining room table, glanced at me to confirm I was still asleep, and began typing. From where I was lying, I could hear fragments of a video call. Yes, I have access to all the accounts. Numbers confirmed. The transfer must be gradual. $50,000 every half hour to avoid automatic alerts. A male voice responded from the computer, but I couldn't distinguish the words clearly. Trust me, Robbie. I've been planning this for 2 years. I know every detail of her financial patterns. Robbie? Who was Robbie? And 2 years? According to the documents I'd seen, this had only started a few months ago. Piper continued. After tonight, we'll have enough to disappear completely. Mexico City first, then maybe Europe. My heart stopped. Disappear? The plan wasn't just to steal my money, it was to lose my daughter forever. The voice from the computer became more audible. Piper, are you sure she won't wake up? These transfers will take at least 3 hours. I gave her enough medicine to keep a 175-pound person asleep for 6 hours. She weighs a 130. She won't move until tomorrow afternoon. The dose was calculated with medical precision. My daughter had left nothing to chance. Then I heard something that terrified me. And if she wakes up early, I have a backup plan. What kind of backup plan? Let's just say a heart attack during a traumatic robbery wouldn't be completely unbelievable for a woman her age. Robbie, whoever he was, went silent for a moment. Piper, you said there would be no violence. And there won't be, as long as everything goes according to plan. But I'm not going to let years of preparation be ruined by an inconvenient awakening. It wasn't just a robbery. My daughter was prepared to kill me if necessary. At that moment, my phone vibrated with a specific pattern that Eric and I had agreed upon. 3 short vibrations meant send the signal when you're ready. But now I had new critical information. There was an accomplice named Robbie handling the transfers remotely. And Piper was willing to commit murder. I needed to find a way to communicate this without revealing I was conscious. Piper got up from the computer and went to the kitchen. I heard her opening drawers, clearly looking for something specific. When she returned, she was carrying one of my kitchen knives. My blood turned to absolute ice. Robbie, I need you to speed up the transfers. Something feels different. What do you mean? I'm not sure. Maybe it's paranoia, but I want to finish this faster than planned. From the computer came the sound of rapid typing. Okay, but making bigger transfers will trigger security alerts. I don't care. Do it. At that moment, I knew I had to act. If I waited any longer, the transfers might be completed before Eric could stop them. And if Piper was becoming paranoid, she might decide to implement her backup plan prematurely. Very slowly, I pulled out my phone and sent a simple message. Now, remote accomplice, Robbie, threat of violence. Immediately after, I pretended to wake up gradually, as if the effect of the pills was wearing off. Piper? I murmured, keeping my eyes closed. I saw Piper freeze completely. She approached the couch to examine me more closely. Mom, are you feeling okay? I'm really thirsty, I whispered, opening my eyes slowly. What time is it? The expression on Piper's face changed immediately. Feigned concern was replaced by cold calculation. It's 9, Mom. You fell asleep after dinner. Why don't you go to bed? I'll help you. Piper moved to close the laptop, but not before I heard Robbie asking, What's going on? Why aren't you answering? Everything's fine, Piper replied quickly. Just a slight delay. But in her eyes, I saw that everything was not fine. I saw the exact moment she decided to implement her backup plan. She walked toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And for the first time in my life, I was genuinely afraid of my own daughter. Mom, I think you need to lie down immediately. At that moment, sirens began wailing in the distance, getting closer quickly. Eric had arrived. The sound of the sirens grew louder, and I saw genuine panic in Piper's eyes for the first time that night. It can't be, she muttered, running to the window. It can't be. From the computer, Robbie's voice became urgent. Piper, what are those sirens? What's going on there? Shut up, Piper yelled, slamming the laptop shut. She turned toward me with an expression I had never seen before. Pure fury and desperation. What did you do? She asked, approaching with the knife still in her hand. I didn't do anything, Piper. I don't understand what's happening. Liar. Her voice cracked between anger and panic. How did you know? How? The sirens stopped right outside my house. Through the window, I could see the red and blue lights illuminating the entire street. Piper Miller, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands up. Eric's voice boomed through a megaphone, clear and authoritative. Piper looked at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. Your brother, of course, always the perfect sister to the perfect cop. Piper, surrender. Don't make this worse than it already is. Worse? She laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. Mom, do you know how many years in prison I'm facing? My life is already ruined. The front door burst open. Eric entered first, followed by 4 federal agents with drawn weapons. Weapon! She has a weapon! One of the agents shouted upon seeing the knife in Piper's hand. Drop the weapon immediately. Piper looked at the knife as if she had forgotten she was holding it. For a moment, I thought she would surrender peacefully. Instead, she smiled with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. You know what, Mom? Before I'm arrested, I want you to know something. Piper, no, I never loved you, not once in 28 years. Every I love you was a lie. Every hug was calculated. Every tear was an act to get what I needed. The words hit me harder than any physical blow. Since I was a kid, I always knew you were weak, pathetic, a woman who would waste her entire life working with animals instead of doing something important. And I always knew that someday I'd find a way to take what I deserved from your pathetic existence. Drop the weapon now, Eric shouted, slowly moving closer. And you know what else, Mom? Piper continued, completely ignoring the police. Dad didn't die in an accident. Uncle Eric knows more than he's told you. Robbie told me the truth. He was Dad's brother and has been looking out for me all these years because you and Eric destroyed our family. Eric tensed noticeably. Piper, you don't know what you're saying. Really? Why don't you tell Mom about the bank accounts you handled after Dad's death? Or about how Robbie had to flee the country because you unfairly blamed him? My world began to spin. Eric, what is she saying? Carla, now is not the time. It's exactly the time, Piper screamed. Robbie taught me everything I needed to know about this family of liars. He taught me that I had been living with the people who destroyed my life before it could even begin. The agents were moving slowly, trying to get closer to Piper without provoking a violent reaction. Piper, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Robbie manipulated you. He used your pain about your father's death to turn you into something you're not. I'm not what, Mom? Not smart, not capable. Because for the last 5 years, I've amassed more money and power than you've seen in your whole pathetic life. You've amassed money by hurting innocent people. There are no innocent people, she screamed. There are only people who take what they want and people who let everything be taken from them. At that moment, one of the agents took advantage of her distraction to move closer. Piper noticed and defensively raised the knife. Stay back. I'm not going to prison to protect this family's dirty secrets. Piper, Eric said calmly, put the knife down and we can talk about all of this. Talk? Like you talked to Dad before he died? Your father died in a home accident, Piper. You know that. Lie. Robbie showed me documents. He showed me photos. I know what you did. In the confusion of shouts and accusations, Piper took a step back and tripped over the coffee table. The knife flew from her hand as she fell, hitting her head violently against the corner of the table. The silence that followed was deafening. Piper lay unconscious, blood flowing from a wound on her temple. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but by then, my daughter had slipped into a coma. As they carried her to the ambulance, Eric approached me with a devastated expression. Carla, there's a lot you need to know about Robbie and what really happened when Rick died. So were Piper's accusations true? Some were, some weren't, but first we need to make sure Piper's okay. As we followed the ambulance to the hospital, I realized that my daughter's betrayal was only the tip of the iceberg. There were family secrets dating back decades, and I was about to discover truths that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. The next few days were a nightmare of hospital waiting rooms and meetings with investigators. Piper remained in a coma, and doctors couldn't predict if she would wake up or what mental condition she would be in if she did. Eric finally told me the complete truth about Robbie and Rick's death. Carla, Robbie is Rick's brother, but he didn't flee the country because we blamed him. He fled because he was involved in the same fraud business that he now runs. Rick died exactly as I told you, in a home accident. But what I didn't tell you is that Robbie showed up that night after Rick had already died. He showed up that night. He had come to confront Rick about money Rick owed him from previous illegal operations. When he found the body, Robbie threatened me. Threatened you how? He said that if I reported the death as accidental, he would disappear and never bother our family again. But if I investigated more deeply, he would expose some questionable dealings Rick had been involved in, things that could have legally implicated you. My stomach lurched. I was involved in something illegal. Not consciously, but Robbie had falsified documents that made it look like you knew about Rick's activities, documents that could have sent you to prison, so you let Robbie escape to protect me. I thought it was best. Robbie disappeared. You were safe. Piper was safe. Or so I thought. When did you find out he had contacted Piper? Eric sighed deeply. About a year ago, when we started investigating the Accelerated Inheritance Strategies Network. Piper's name came up in our files as an active operative. And you didn't tell me? I was hoping to handle the situation without involving the family. I thought I could arrest Robbie and get Piper out of the network without you ever having to know what happened. But you failed. I failed because I didn't understand how deeply Robbie had manipulated Piper. She wasn't just a casual scammer who could be easily rehabilitated. Robbie had been psychologically grooming her since she was a teenager. At that moment, Dr. Ramirez approached our table with a serious expression. Mrs. Miller, your daughter has woken up, but there are some complications we need to discuss. My heart raced. What kind of complications? Piper has selective amnesia. She remembers her childhood and adolescence clearly, but the last 5 years are practically a complete blank. The last 5 years? The years when Robbie was manipulating her? Exactly. It's as if her mind has selectively blocked that period of her life. Eric and I looked at each other. Doctor, is this permanent? It's hard to predict. The memory could gradually return, or it might never come back. In cases of severe psychological trauma, the brain sometimes chooses to forget as a protection mechanism. When I entered Piper's room, My daughter looked at me with confused eyes but full of genuine love. Mom, what happened? The doctors say I was in a coma, but I don't remember how I got here. I sat by her bedside, taking her hand. You had an accident, honey. You hit your head. But why were there police? Someone mentioned police being involved. I looked at Eric, who nodded slightly. We had decided to tell her the truth gradually, only if necessary. Piper, what is the last thing you clearly remember? She frowned, concentrating. I remember being in college, studying for my degree. I remember living with you, helping out around the house. I remember missing Dad, but being happy that it was just the two of us. Do you remember anyone named Robbie? Robbie? No, I don't think so. Should I know him? Eric and I exchanged glances. Piper remembered nothing of the years when Robbie had been manipulating her. Over the next few weeks, as Piper recovered physically, an impossible question arose. Should we try to help her regain her lost memories, knowing that those memories included years of criminal activity and hatred toward me? The Piper in that hospital bed was the daughter I remembered from before Robbie's manipulation. She was affectionate, worried about my well-being, and horrified when we vaguely told her she had been involved in problematic activities during her lost years. Mom, did I hurt anyone during those years I can't remember? Yes, honey, you hurt a lot of people, including me. I hurt you? Her eyes filled with tears. How? Why? Because someone manipulated you into doing it. Someone convinced you that I was your enemy instead of your mother. Can you forgive me for things I don't even remember doing? That question broke my heart and healed it at the same time. I already forgave you, Piper, before you even woke up. How can you be sure? Because I look into your eyes now and I see my daughter again. I don't see the stranger that someone else had created. Piper cried that day, tears of relief and confusion. And for the first time in years, I cried too, but out of hope. Although the question remained, what would happen if her memory returned? Would I lose my daughter again? 3 months after Piper woke up from the coma, we had established a new routine at home. She attended therapy 3 times a week, both to help with her physical recovery and to process the information about her lost years. She had decided not to actively try to retrieve her memories. Mom, she told me one afternoon while we were preparing dinner together, I feel like those 5 years was someone else's life, a person I don't like very much. Aren't you curious about what happened? Sometimes, but I'm also afraid that if I remember everything, I might turn back into that person. Piper's therapist, Dr. Moreno, had explained to me that this was normal. Carla, Piper is essentially rebuilding her identity from a healthier foundation. Forcing the return of traumatic memories could be counterproductive. Everything seemed to be improving until I received a call that changed everything. Mrs. Miller, this is Detective Ruiz from the FBI. We need to talk to you about Robbie Stewart. Did you find him? We found him, but there are complications. Robbie is dying of cancer and has asked to see Piper before he dies. He says he has critical information about other members of the criminal network that could save more families. Absolutely not. I'm not exposing Piper to that man again. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but Robbie claims there are active operations planned for the coming weeks that will affect multiple families. Without his information, we can't stop them. That night, I discussed the situation with Eric and Piper. Do you want to go? I asked my daughter directly. Yes, she replied without hesitation. I don't remember this Robbie, but if he can help prevent other families from going through what we apparently went through, I want to help. 2 days later, we entered the federal prison where Robbie was being held in the medical unit. The man we found was a shadow of the intelligent manipulator Eric had described. The cancer had left him emaciated in a week. When he saw Piper, his eyes filled with tears. Piper, my girl, thank you for coming. I don't remember you, sir, Piper replied firmly, and frankly, I'm glad I don't remember you either. Robbie looked genuinely surprised. You don't remember anything about our years working together? Nothing, and according to what I've been told, that's probably a blessing. Robbie looked toward me and then toward Eric. Amnesia? Selective, Eric confirmed, and we're going to keep it that way. Maybe it's better, Robbie murmured. Maybe it's better. Over the next hour, Robbie gave us detailed information about active cells in the criminal network. Names, locations, methods, planned targets. It was information that could effectively save dozens of families. But at the end of the session, Robbie asked to speak with me privately. Carla, there's something Piper needs to know, something that might help her understand why it was so easy to manipulate her. I'm not going to let you hurt her again. It's not to hurt her, it's to protect her from it happening again. What are you talking about? Piper had a predisposition to manipulation because she had experienced deep emotional abandonment during her childhood. That's ridiculous. I never abandoned her. Not physically. But Carla, for years after Rick's death, you were so absorbed in your own grief that Piper felt emotionally abandoned. His words hit me like a punch. I was processing the death of my husband. I know, and I don't blame you, but a 10-year-old doesn't understand that. She only understands that her mom is no longer emotionally present. Are you saying this is all my fault? I'm saying I exploited a vulnerability that already existed. And if Piper is going to have a healthy life moving forward, she needs to understand where that vulnerability came from so she can heal it. When we left the prison, Piper seemed thoughtful. Mom, can I ask you something about when Dad died? Of course, honey. Is it true that I became very needy after his death? Like I was constantly afraid you would leave me too? The question surprised me with its precision. Yes, you were. Why do you ask? Because even though I don't remember the last 5 years, I do remember feeling during my adolescence that I constantly had to work to keep your love, as if it were conditional. Her observation broke my heart because she was right. In my own pain over Rick's death, I'd inadvertently created insecurity in my daughter. Piper, do you think that made me vulnerable to someone who promised to love me unconditionally in exchange for doing what he wanted? It's possible, she admitted. Mom, I don't blame you for anything. But I think we need to talk about those years after Dad's death, not to regain lost memories, but to heal wounds that we maybe never properly addressed. That night, we began conversations that should have taken place decades ago about pain, abandonment, conditional and unconditional love, and about how to build healthy relationships on honest foundations. Robbie died 3 weeks later. At his funeral, which no one else attended, Piper placed flowers on his grave. Why? I asked, because even though he hurt me terribly, he also taught me something valuable. What did he teach you? He taught me what I don't want to be. And sometimes those are the most important lessons. A year after Robbie's death, our life had found a new rhythm. Piper had finished her degree in computer security and had started working for an organization that helped victims of financial fraud. It's ironic, she told me one afternoon while reviewing cases in her home office, using the same technical skills to protect people from what I apparently used to do to hurt them. Eric had been promoted to chief of the financial crimes division, partly because of the success in dismantling Robbie's network using the information we had obtained. It seemed we had finally found peace. Then, on a seemingly normal day, Piper came home with an expression I hadn't seen in years, deep confusion mixed with what looked like recognition. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it, honey? Today, while interviewing a new client, she mentioned a name that sounded familiar to me. My heart raced. For 2 years, I had feared this moment, the return of her lost memories. What name? Robbie. But not just the name. When she described how he initially contacted her, I remembered. Piper sat heavily on the couch. Mom, my memory is coming back. Not everything, but fragments. What kind of fragments? I remember the day Robbie first contacted me. I was 18 and struggling with college. I remember exactly what he told me to convince me that you and Eric had ruined my life. I braced myself for the worst. If Piper fully recovered her memories, would she turn back into the person who had hated me? Piper, how do you feel remembering that? Angry, she said immediately. But not at you, at myself, because now I can see exactly how Robbie used my insecurities against me. Do you remember the things you did to me? Piper closed her eyes, concentrating. I remember planning to rob you. I remember convincing myself that you deserved it. Her voice broke. I remember the night I planned to drug you. Tears streamed down her face. Mom, I remember all the horrible things I did, but I also remember why I did them. And I can see now that every justification was a lie Robbie had taught me to believe. Does it change you, recovering those memories? It changes me, but not in the way you feared. Piper looked directly at me. It makes me understand why forgiveness was so powerful. What do you mean? When you lost faith in me, but continued to love me, you gave the real part of me, the part Robbie hadn't completely corrupted, the strength to survive. Even when I couldn't access that part, I knew on some deep level that I was loved. Piper took my hands. Mom, now that I remember both versions of myself, the one Robbie created and the one you helped heal, I can help other people find their way back too. Over the next few weeks, as more memories returned, Piper became even more effective in her work. She could talk to victims from a perspective of complete understanding. She knew how it felt to be manipulated. She knew how it felt to be the manipulator. And she knew how it felt to find the path to redemption. 6 months later, as we celebrated the 3rd anniversary of her organization, Piper asked me a question I had been waiting for. Mom, is there anything you always wanted to ask me about those lost years but never dared to? Only one thing. What? During all those years, when you hated me, when you planned to hurt me, was there any part of you that still loved me? Piper considered the question carefully. Honestly, most of the time, no. Robbie had so completely poisoned my feelings toward you that I genuinely believed you were my enemy. My heart sank a little. But, she continued, there were moments, especially toward the end, when something inside me fought against what I was doing. Moments when I saw your genuine love for me, and a part of me wondered if Robbie could be wrong. Like what moments? Like when you insisted on paying to fix my laptop without even asking me what it was for. Like when you gave me hugs that I rejected, but secretly needed. Like when you defended me to others, even when I had been cruel to you. Piper smiled with tears in her eyes. Mom, I think your love was like a seed planted in frozen ground. It couldn't sprout immediately, but when spring finally arrived, it was already there, waiting. That night, as I reflected on everything we had been through, I realized that our story wasn't just about forgiveness or redemption. It was about the power of unconditional love to survive even the deepest betrayal and eventually transform it into something beautiful. My daughter had been lost for years, manipulated by forces neither of us had fully understood, but she found her way back home, and in the process, she became someone who could guide others back too. Today, 5 years after the night that changed our lives forever, I can honestly say that although we lost years to betrayal and manipulation, we also gained something invaluable. The understanding that true love can survive anything and that redemption is always possible for those willing to do the hard work of rebuilding trust. Piper now runs one of the most effective nonprofits in the country against family fraud. I work part-time at the animal clinic and part-time as a volunteer at her organization. Eric retired last year but continues to console on complicated cases. We are an imperfect family that has survived betrayal, lies, manipulation, and years of pain, but we are also a family that has proven that love can conquer even the deepest darkness. Sometimes victories don't come with fanfare or celebration. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you chose love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, and hope over despair. And for the first time in decades, that feels like enough.